Tell me a little bit about your background before you came to San Miguel.
I spent, it may be a record, 63 years in broadcasting, 7 years in radio and 56 in television, on camera and as a producer, and I did everything but sports. I was an anchorman, I was a talk show host, a science editor, a consumer editor. I produced some material of my own, and that was how I spent 63 years. I started when I was still in college in 1941. Worked in a small station in Jamestown, New York. And then later I worked in Syracuse, New York, where I was still going to college, Syracuse University. And then even after the war, we were stationed in Japan, the occupation army, and I was made the officer in charge of an armed forces radio station. So starting with age 21, it's what I did, what I loved to do.
So what brought you to San Miguel?
Came here for 5 days and fell in love with it. We didn't know why. And we came back 3 months later to try to find out why. There was something in the atmosphere, the people we started to meet. It was just an experience, and I knew immediately this is where I wanted to retire. The first visit was in 1986. By then I was 66 years old. And I knew that I was going to retire here. Went immediately and studied some Spanish at Villanova University. I did 4 semesters, most of which I've forgotten. And I had to sneak up on it because I was still working. I would come for 3 weeks, then 6 weeks, and 2 months, and 3 months, and toward the end I was coming for 6 months. Winter and summer here in San Miguel, spring and fall in Philadelphia. That's incidentally where I lived for 57 years. I was born and raised in New York, but I lived in Philadelphia for 57 years.
So how did you learn about Patronato, or why did you choose to go and help?
We were going on a tour of Mexico. I had never visited before, nor had my wife. This was my second wife. I lost her to lung cancer about 10 years ago, and this beautiful lady was waiting for me. We've been married now for 9 years. But somebody said, well, you're going to Mexico City and Guadalajara and Oaxaca. You should go to this little town called San Miguel de Allende. I said, where is it and what's so special? They said, it's a beautiful small town and you never know what's going to be behind the walls. It could be a little house with some people raising pigs and chickens, or it could be a gorgeous palazzo. And we did find on that very first visit, I have a friend who is a very bright man who says that there are 4 or 5 places on the planet where the yin and the yang, the magnetic forces, positive and negative, come together and make you feel good about yourself. And San Miguel is one of those places.
And how did you learn about Patronato?
The first thing I did was feed the hungry. Tony Adlerbert and Herb White knew about my background and said they wanted to produce a fundraising video, and I certainly agreed. And I remember going to a meeting, and some guy had a 15, 20-minute script, and I said, this is ridiculous. If your story isn't told in 5 minutes, it's a lousy story, or you're telling it badly. And I was still working. We went out and shot it, Bill Curra and Herb White and I was able to take it back to my studio in Philadelphia and edit it and narrate it and got 200 copies made without it costing Feed the Hungry a peso. And then the next thing I know, Marty Simon, who was a good friend, was elected president of Patronato for Niños and asked me if I would join them to do promotion and publicity. I said, certainly. And that was hasn't been that long ago, maybe 12 years ago. You know, I'm very honored, and as is Dorothy, and flattered, but there are people who've probably done, oh, Dorothy's been with it much, much longer than I have. You know, it's still very flattering and very humbling to know that they've singled us out. We have been picked not because we've done the most work, it's because we've survived. We're the only nonagenarians, to the best of my knowledge. She's 95, I think, and I'm 92. And I think that's why we were selected. Not because we're better workers.
No, I'm sure there's a lot of work that you've done. Yeah. And of your memories of Patronato, I know that you wrote some articles and...
Well, I did a lot of articles for Atención. And also, at one point, I don't know whether somebody asked me or it was my idea to do a newsletter. Well, I spent 63 years in the media, not 10 seconds in print. All of it was sound, radio and television. And I didn't know the first thing about working a computer. I went out and for $50 I bought a 50-year-old typewriter, a ream of paper, a ruler, and a lot of Scotch tape. And I put together, and I remember one of the members helped me find a printer, and we did the first one. I did. And I learned a little about print. And I should mention my nephew. About the third year, I was going back to Philadelphia. The stories were all written. And I went to him. He had a small advertising agency named John Crane. And I said, John, help me with layout. Just layout. The rest of it is okay. I just have no sense of layout. He took it, did the layout, sent it to a printer, bought envelopes, folded and stuffed, and then asked us for addresses of the people in the United States so he could buy stamps and mail them. And he did that for us for 4 or 5 years. It was a wonderful gift for Niños, really. But I just had such a kick with this $50 typewriter and just cutting and pasting and gluing. And it was great fun, and I learned something about it. And then I did a lot of stories for Atención. And I would go out with the volunteers sometime. My very first trip had nothing to do with sick children. Sterling Dickinson, a marvelous man, and I had just agreed to join. He said, listen, I'm going out on a project, would you like to come? And I figured, what has he got to do with sick children? But that's not what he was about. He had boxes of coloring books and crayons for a little kindergarten school, a class, and I got a pretty good sense then of what we were up against. These children, most of them barefoot, bare floors, the walls were bamboo posts and a tin roof. And he was just so wonderful with those children. It was an inspiration, it really was. And I used to go out with the volunteers all the time. I think that the natives, their parents must have gone, why is that gringo crying? I do now. Either because I saw the success of something we were doing, or saw the sadness of what had to be done. That's my, you know.
And how long were you on the board?
Well, I was on the board from the moment I started because I was a committee and I was the committee chairman. I was the chairman most of the time, you know. I guess about 10, 12 years, yeah.
Oh. And of your experiences on the board, is there something that you would like to share with people to invite them to either be on the board or to help Patronato in some way?
Well, to anyone who might be interested, when I hear people coming to San Miguel to retire, and I say, listen, if you want something that's inspirational, that makes you feel that you're giving back to San Miguel, if you want something that is the most trying to think of a word. The most rewarding. And you shouldn't need reward. You should just feel that you're doing something that's so worthwhile, and we all feel that we're giving back to San Miguel. Because San Miguel has welcomed us, made us happy, and again, great rewarding. I can see you're a very...
Oh, I'm the easiest here. It doesn't take much to get me moved, but
That's not a good reporter.
No, I would be very bad on TV. I'd be crying all the time.
I too. I had to be very careful when I'm on the air. If I'm doing a story about someone who died or someone I cared about, Jesus Christ. Take a B shot.
Look at something. Yes. Of the time that you've spent on the Patronato, how do you see it today? Because you've been there for 10 years, but where do you see the future of the Patronato?
I was not there in the beginning, obviously. I think
Sterling Dickens.
I have to be so careful about the names. I should have done some research. Luisa Velti, I think they started in the 70s, and they maybe treated 35 children. We're now treating close to 10,000 children. That's miraculous. That's just wonderful. It's to a great extent, it's become a business, because first of all, the cost of everything is so outrageous. Come on, when we came here to live in 1986, you could live, American couple coming in could live for under $10,000 a year for, And now you've got to think a lot big numbers than that. And it has affected the kind of work that Niños does as well. Sure, we get a lot of children. Floyd Edwards has been the one who's been most instrumental in getting municipal, state, and federal to contribute and to join with us. And we got the city to give us the ground that we built the center on, and everybody contributed. It was, really, it is astonishing to see what has happened. And the same thing has happened with all of them. Feed the Hungry. I think they have 7 kitchens. I'm guessing that they have something like 33 or 35 now. And more organizations like ours have sprung up. Bill Curra with his computers, you know about that? He's got thousands of computers out there. Astonishing. He's got about 70 or 80 volunteers. Saul Lindman, I just hope I have his name right. They are Casalino. I remember watching them build their first little concrete house. And they're going to have a big celebration, celebrating their 50th, I think sometime in the next month or so. And this has been so wonderful to see. There's a great deal of competition, because there's only just so much money to go around. But this community and people in the United States have been so generous in helping us.
What do you see in the future of Patronato?
The need for more money. I don't think we can get any bigger. I don't know. You'd have to talk to all the presidents, to Mary and Jane and all of them, Isabella, and God, the presidents work so hard, and there's so many people on the board. That's why I say this is very humbling, because I didn't work that hard. I didn't have to do what I had to do was write a story or go out with with a volunteer. But I don't know how we can grow any larger. First of all, the need for funds to grow larger, because right now, in the midst of this recession, it's tougher getting money. And to make the organization work sharper, to do more with less money, I would think.